Hi love bugs, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about The Bonds of Hercules by Jasmine Moss, the sequel to Blood of Hercules by Jasmine Moss. I covered the previous book on this channel previously and I had some pretty strong feelings about it, so I am excited to talk about this book with you guys today. Honestly, I think about the first book very often. It confounded me in a way that no book ever has. I was bewildered at every turn, and I still frequently look back on it and just think to myself, what happened to me while I was reading that? And I still don't know the answer. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this book. I wasn't originally going to read it because I didn't want to, and then there was honestly some drama on TikTok that pushed me over the edge to finally want to read it. And I hate talking about TikTok drama on this channel because it makes me feel really chronically online and lame, but I'll tell you about it just so that you have the same context going into this book that I did. So this account called Listen to Kristen, who is very funny, you should check her out if you haven't, made a TikTok video, came across my For You page, talking about the writing style of this book and particularly the way that it's broken into really short paragraphs, often just a sentence, two sentences before line breaking to the next paragraph, and she talked about this as a symptom, or rather as a manifestation of anti-intellectualism. Now, I didn't agree. I thought this was a little bit strong, just like, going into this argument, but it really pissed off a lot of the diehards, of which there are many, including this guy who I'm not gonna name because I don't want to get into it like that and don't want to give this guy attention, made this really condescending, honestly, video talking about why she's wrong. Two of the points that people really clung on to were A, that Jasmine Moss knows more about the material than other people because she has an undergrad degree in it from Georgetown, and two, that the book is formatted in this way because it's mimicking Greek lyric. So thinking of the epic cycle. I don't know that I've shared this on my channel before, but I read ancient Greek, and so I've read a lot of ancient Greek lyric, both in the original and in translation, from the epic cycle, comedy, tragedy, fragmentary lyric, all that kind of stuff. So I could give you a counter argument about why I think this is not a defensible position, why I think this is not true, but I would like to leave this room at some point. And also I think it is a little bit clear once we actually talk about the content of the book and the way that it's written. I think that you'll find it very clear. And then also, this isn't a real argument. Like, this is so obviously created just to justify liking this book, and you don't have to justify liking it. It's okay. We all have different tastes, different opinions. It's really, you don't have to intellectualize why you like the book. It's really all right to like it. So, I mean, there's no weight to this. There's no substance. This is air. This is just words. It's not a real argument. So I guess my counter argument is just, no, it isn't. But what's important is that the author reposted this video, and that sparked a whole conversation about reader and reviewer spaces and when authors encroach on that. I do think it is unprofessional to break that barrier, and I understand from a human level, from an empathetic level, why she would be tempted and why seeing a video like that come across your FYP is hurtful and makes you want to lash out and react in some way. But it is just a professionalism barrier where, as an artist, as a professional in an artistic field, you have to just be okay with the fact that there are going to be bad reviews and nasty reviews out there and not let it affect you, because that's just, it's gonna happen to every single author. Every single artist who has ever lived has experienced this exact same thing, and you just kind of have to, it's just part of the job, I think. I've been in many creative writing and art critique and and that is a completely different environment, first of all, because that is aimed at being constructive rather than just reviewing. But some part of it is just knowing what criticism is helpful and what's not, and then you're able to kind of filter it out later. If you get criticism, it doesn't matter how earnest the person is, if it's not helpful to you, ignore it. And so like there is just a matter of like knowing when to ignore something. But I bring it up because Kristen responded to this video and to this like reposting situation with a video of the author herself in an interview saying that she wrote the book in this way because it makes it easier to skim and because she has a lot of brain rot. And I think that is evident in the text. So I'm going to probably bring that up as we talk about this book because I mean, I wasn't going into it looking for it, but it appeared to be nonetheless. And so what I guess I should clarify is that this is a review. It is not meant for the author. Please do not send it to her or send her anything that I say in this review. Not that I think anybody would, because it would be really mean, but I don't intend for this to reach her. This is strictly for reviewers, for fun, for laughs. If you are a big fan of hers and of this book and you don't want to engage with content that is critical of it, protect your peace and don't watch this video. It's just a fact of life that people like different things. People have different tastes of what's good and what's bad. It's all subjective. And I mean, I like so many things that people have told me to my face that they think are awful. So it's just a fact of life. It's just part of it. And isn't that beautiful? You know, just the beauty of life, of human subjectivity. And at the end of the day, we're all strangers on the internet. And it doesn't really matter what we think because we're all gonna die one day anyway. So let's talk about the book. So I decided that I was gonna read it because of this Greek lyric thing, honestly, and also because the skimmability thing was so insane to me that I just had to see it for myself. Because I mean, I originally didn't agree with her argument that this was a symptom of anti-intellectualism, but when I saw that interview clip, I thought to myself, now that's a good argument. That's a closing statement if I ever saw one. But also I like to be productive on this channel. I like to have something to say beyond like, I just didn't like it. So while I'm not going into this in good faith, like this is not, it's gonna seem at times like I'm reading this book in bad faith, but I don't want to trash without balance. Hopefully that is clear throughout my videos. I do want to go through what is working, what's not, what I personally am thinking about and what's standing out to me in this book. I think it's a good exercise in critical reading, critical thinking. I think it makes me better at reading and writing and just thinking in general. And I hope that you feel the same. I think that Jasmine Moss is an intelligent woman. I see a lot of people talking about how she must not know what she's talking about, but she has a BA in classics from Georgetown, which is an excellent university. And then she went to law school, so she is an educated woman. She is intelligent. And I, as someone who is currently in my final semester of a master's degree in classics, disagree with a lot of her approach to the content and a lot of her interpretation, her usage, but I'm not trying to take away from any of her accomplishments, and I'm not trying to say anything about her as a person or her readers as people. So I want to look at the content of the book now, and I want to actually start. The book gives us some character profiles, so I thought we could look at those first because they're fun, and I want to look at them, and I was going to bury the lead, but I'm going to show it to you before I bury it. There are some things in the character profiles that will come up later that I'm going to talk about, so keep it in mind. Here we have our first one. Augustus. Nicknames: the eldest chthonic heir. Oh, hang on.
Chthonic.
Fuck. The eldest chthonic heir, heir to the House of War, the diplomat. I would argue that the eldest chthonic heir is not a nickname and isn't even really a title, kind of just a description. Dad is Aries, mom is Aphrodite, 6'6", 255 pounds, power, mental compulsion, breaks minds. Animal protector, raccoon, rabid, in parentheses. The raccoon is objectively not rabid. It does not have the rabies virus. You do not worry about contracting it. If you were near this raccoon, you would be okay. It is fully a domesticated animal, basically a house cat. You know how fucking serious the rabies virus is? Power ranking, 85 out of 100. Occupations, Assembly of Death member, founded WSDL Weapons Manufacturing, majority shareholder of WSDL Weapons Manufacturing, net worth $6 billion. I think, and I'm going to talk about this also, the editing in this book, I think, is extremely poor. I think that the publisher did a bad job with it, and I think that's disrespectful to the author and to the audience. Because WSDL, weapons manufacturing, I mean, before we even get to the content of the book, weapons manufacturing, I'm pretty sure, is part of the title, so it should be capitalized. Charon, the hunter, killer, sociopath, Hades' favorite soldier, the ferryman. I don't know that anyone ever calls him these nicknames. Well, they do at the very end of the book. That she starts using some of their nicknames in her internal monologue, but I don't know that anyone's ever called him the ferryman, and I think the ferryman actually is a really cool nickname, but I know that I only think that because I'm associating it with my own, like, existing interpretations of the character from mythology. I think is a very cool image. I mean, he doesn't even have a boat in this. Father is Erebus, mother is Artemis, 6'5", 265 pounds, power, touch. Wait, Patroclus. I'm not gonna call him Patro. I didn't do it in the previous video either. I know it's a weird line to draw, but I just think it sounds dumb. The son of sex, the leader of the Crimson Duo, the ideal man, Achilles' handler. Mom, Aphrodite. Father, some guy. Height 6'4", weight 240. Power, touch again, detects lies. I think this power is touch activated. He does use it. Wait, I mean, I can remember one instance of him using it with touch, but I don't remember if he's doing it the other times too. Anyway, we'll just say it's touch activated. But again, the formatting here. Achilles, the son of war, the killer. I thought that Charon was the killer. Oh, no, sorry. Charon is just killer with no the. Achilles is the killer. We have to make these differentiations. The beast of the Crimson Duo. Father is Ares, mom is some lady, 6'7", 290 pounds. That actually is really big now that I think about it. Power, voice torture ability, details unknown. Power ranking, 95 out of 100. Occupations, assembly of death member found with pistol weapons. Net worth $3 billion, so he's the poorest of them. He's kind of a pavo, if you think about it. I don't really understand why they have to be billionaires. I think it adds nothing to the story. I was thinking about it. I don't think we ever see them actually spend money at any point in the story. They give Alexis a very nice gift at some point, which I assume was exchanged for money. The Spartans are not gods, but they're also like basically gods, so I don't know why currency is really an object to them. But anyway, those are our character introductions. Keep them in your mind, keep them in your head, because we're gonna come back to them. So talking now about the content of the book, a lot of the things that I have to say are kind of like that, where it's not even necessarily that my issue is with the example that I'm talking about in that moment. It's about the compounding effect of how many times that issue arises for me. It's not just like every single little detail. It's that there are so many details that are so slightly off in the same way that it just kind of makes me look at the whole thing a little funny. And then also another thing I wanted to say again, I kind of already said it, is that the editing in this book is bad. I don't know, this is a HarperCollins like Big Five published book, and I do not understand what they were doing in the amount of time that they had to edit this book, because there are grammar issues, there are like inconsistencies, plot inconsistencies, incongruencies, there's just like continuity errors, and formatting also with the epigraph and with the yeah, there's just so many editing issues that I feel like should have been caught on like a first pass, honestly. And I guess I don't know what the book looked like before a first pass. And I've noticed that a lot of the books that are kind of geared towards book talk are being edited with a lot of laziness. And I think that is really disrespectful to the authors, to the readers, and just kind of to the genre and to the work as a whole. And I think that's unacceptable. And I also learned recently that HarperCollins intends to replace a lot of their human translators with AI. And I think anyone who's ever done translation or knows multiple languages knows why that's not the same thing. And I think it is just such just like a laziness and a failure on the part of the editor. And I think that's really disgusting and embarrassing. So I wanted to call that out. not anything against Jasmine Moss, but strictly like the publishing house, I think really failed this book and really dropped the ball. So let's start talking about the book itself. Oh, I forgot to give you a summary of the last book. So we ended the last book with our main character Alexis learning that she's actually Hercules, the daughter of Hades and Persephone, and that she has been reunited with them. They previously thought that she was dead, but pretty immediately after that, she is tricked into this forced marriage with Augustus and Charon, and that's kind of where we start this next book, is that she has left after their wedding and is staying with her parents, so they haven't seen each other since, and yeah, that's where we are. She wants to get revenge on them for tricking her into this marriage, and that is where we're going to pick up. And just going into this first chapter, though, I did feel like it was going better than a lot of the previous book, because I felt like there was an intention and just like a motivating factor to the book that was missing from the previous one. I feel like seeing Alexis deciding that she wanted to get revenge on her husbands and kind of having that goal in the back of her mind gave her something to push her forward, gave the story momentum, and I thought that that was really working. And then later in the chapter, when she does meet back up with Augustus and Charon, I thought that the way that was described and her attraction to them, or at least like the physical appeal that they have, there was a care and attention being given to that, and so I thought that it worked. I thought this like wanting to kill them but also being attracted to them dynamic, I thought that that was strong. I thought that was pretty good. They did like assault her in the previous book. At the very least, it was a very strong coercion, and I was uncomfortable with it. But so I mean, I still can't get behind their relationship. But so she has to go to this kind of initiation ritual thing for the new Spartan class, in which, well, I'll tell you that in a second, because as she's preparing, she and her dad have this exchange. He's trying to like talk her up, kind of get her hyped for this new mission, and he tells her like, okay, repeat it back to me, what did I tell you? And she says, no one fears the sane. And I honestly just feel like that's a little bit like not cool to put in a book in 2025 is when this book came out. I feel like it's honestly just really outdated. Like, I was surprised to see that kind of language in this book because it just feels like something that would have been published like 20 years ago. Alexis is also Catholic, and that is actually really significant to the book. The book has like these really strong Catholic overtones, maybe undertones, but I feel like sometimes they are overtones. Just throughout the entire thing, everything kind of circles back to Catholicism, and I think that it could be interesting. I think that it's not explored with enough like criticalness or attention really, or even really notice. I don't even know that the book notices it's doing this, but I think it could be interesting because Alexis technically, like, I know the Spartans aren't technically gods, but they kind of are in other ways. I think it is interesting to see that dynamic of her technically belonging to this pantheon, or at least this superhuman class of being, while still having faith in a different religion, and how she views herself fitting into the world with that belief system, while also physically and materially belonging to a different belief system, or at least a different species. You know, I think that could be really interesting. How do we reconcile those two things? Because she has this quote in chapter 1. She says, in my mind, Father John was throwing holy water at my face. You're possessed, he whispered, eyes wide with terror. You're one of them, an abomination. And I think that that is really interesting to, like, how would she reconcile seeing herself as being something that is even like demonic, or something that is against her religion physically, that she herself is against her own religion while still maintaining that belief. I think that could be a really interesting dynamic to explore. It's not explored, but I think it could be. Like, there's a groundwork there for something that is really interesting. So she has to meet in the woods with the like younger gen of the Spartans and the initiation class of the Spartans for their initiation rite, and she sees Augustus and Charon for the first time after their wedding, and this is how she describes them. We're still in chapter 1. Two men looked particularly murderous. Their gazes scoured the side of my face with knife-like sharpness. Knife-like sharpness? I know that knives are sharp. That's the one quality that they're mostly known for. Just like their knife-like gazes, I think, is so much cleaner. I think it just like flows better. It doesn't sound silly. And like I just feel like an editor should have caught that. So again, this is the book that, I don't want to be mean, I'm gonna say it. This is the book that people said was imitating Homer. And you know what? He might have said something like this. So they're all there. She sees Augustus and Charon and their knife-like sharpness, and she sees Achilles and Patroclus, and Hermas and Agatha are these like creature people who are also there. They'll come up later in the book. That's the only reason I mention them. Achilles, as a reminder, I think I might have shown you the picture, has a muzzle on because he's too dangerous. To his voice torture details unknown ability is too dangerous, and I'm not exaggerating because I was looking for this. I think it's true that every scene he is described, every scene in which he is present, he is smoking a cigarette through the grates of his muzzle. Here's a description of him still in chapter 1. I got a lot of content from chapter 1. Achilles glared, a cigarette hanging between the grates of his muzzle. Smoke rose around his face, red eyes bright through the hazy tendrils, hair pulled back tightly with death tattooed across his knuckles. He was a blazing presence in the frigid forest. But I'm wondering if the thumb is included, if it's DEATH, or if maybe one of the letters is doubled up. So you can let me know in the comments, how would you tattoo death across your knuckles if you were hardcore enough to do so? Because obviously this is the most hardcore, intense, big giant man who's ever lived, so none of us can ever measure up. But if in a hypothetical situation in which you could, how are you tattooing death across your knuckles? Let me know, I'm curious. But what I mean to say is that Achilles as a character to me was so comical that I, at multiple points, many times throughout this book, genuinely wondered if it was meant to be a satire and everybody's been grossly misreading it. Because, I mean, this is the funniest shit I've ever read. I would be so honest. Every time, because sometimes he would be introduced to a scene and I would be like, oh, he's not smoking. Now we're getting serious. And then he would pull out the cigarette and it was like a bit from a sitcom. Like, it's so fucking funny every time that I really was like, okay, this is a joke. This is meant to make me laugh, and it is. But so they're gathered in the woods, and the officiant of the games is Artemis, who, I'm just gonna say it now, bears no resemblance to any iteration of her mythologically ever. She's this like terror goddess who creates fear. And she's also Charon's mom, so keep that in mind. She is going to be officiating this game. Theros is there. He was the guy who betrayed them in the previous book. It's actually kind of important that you remember this. He was killing off Zeus's offspring so that he could be like the sole heir, with the help of this woman, Ceres. So he's there, Drex is there, and Alexis is there, and I think that's everybody who's there. I think I've gone over everyone. So Artemis tells us that the task given to them is that this new gen has to be hunted through the woods for 25 miles, and they're not allowed to fight. And they're not allowed to fight back, and they're not allowed to leap, which is like teleporting, and if they don't make it out, they get killed. Keep in mind that this group of people has a population problem. But here we actually come across what I think are two inconsistencies in the plot. So first of all, Artemis tells us that if you are caught, you will be killed. But then on the same page, she tells us if you are caught, the two Spartans who catch you will be your partners in your first mission to fight the Titans. This is like 6 lines apart from each other. I don't know why, I don't know how this made it through. But then also, she tells us that leaping is forbidden, and we're about to see that Alexis does it. She specifies that once you get out of the woods, you can leap. And Alexis does make it to a clearing before she leaps. But to my understanding, this is still a clearing in the woods. There's no way she's gotten through 25 miles of woods before she got to this little clearing. So to me, I was like, oh, okay, she just did it something against the rules, and like now we're gonna have to deal with that. It's not brought up again. So I think it is a little bit in this gray area where I'm like, is it an inconsistency because she is in a clearing, but also, like, a clearing is still in the woods. Now, Artemis is Charon's mom. Charon was unofficially disowned because he lost the Colosseum Games. I forgot to tell you, the Colosseum Games are coming up. This is like the biggest plot point of the book. I really should have said it earlier. But he lost the Colosseum Games the first time he competed when he was 18. And his mom said, none of that, out of my house. And then unofficially disowned him, which I think is like kind of not disowning. And it's at this point that I want to mention another video by Kristen that came across my FYP recently. I didn't watch the whole thing because it looked like she was going to start talking about spoilers, and I didn't want to get spoilers. She plays another clip of the same interview with Jasmine Moss in which she says that she didn't realize that Artemis and Apollo are twins. Artemis and Apollo are both characters in this book, and Jasmine Moss also specifies that she primarily did Greek history and not Greek mythology. Now, speaking as someone who knows a little bit about the subject, Greek mythology is Greek religion, is Greek culture, is really important to understanding ancient Greek history. You can study ancient Greek history until you die, but you can't separate it from its culture. So for example, in Xenophon's Anabasis, which is arguably the first military autobiography, undeniably is a work of military history and not of mythology, there are a lot of references to mythology. One of the examples that I thought of first is that as he and his troops are going through into the Near East, they come across this cave and this river, which they identify as being the cave in which Apollo and Marsyas had their music competition, and Apollo ended up skinning Marsyas alive. It's a really good story. But like what I mean to say is that this is how he viewed the world. This is not just a story that was told at bedtime. This isn't just folklore to him. Like this was a real legitimate part of how he understood the world, what he knew to be true, what he knew to be history. This is how he understood things when he saw them for the first time, when he entered lands that he'd never been to. This is how he understood it. It is history. It is baked into the history of this culture. And then another example, Herodotus is the so-called father of history. I was reading him in Greek the other day, and girl, book 1, part 1 is about all the like mythological origins of like Greek culture. It talks about Io and Europa and Medea and Helen and Paris. Like literally the Trojan War, book 1, intro, first thing we do is establish all these kind of mythological origins, which Herodotus is taking to be true. He kind of presents them in a less mystical way, but he presents them as history. And so at least like at his time period, and it does change by the time we get to like Thucydides and stuff, he has a different take on it, but to these early Greek people, this was history. This was how they understood the world. This was their culture. This was baked into every aspect of life. It permeated everything. So I don't think it is fair to say that you can separate Greek history from Greek mythology. But with that said, in my best faith reading of this interview, I can see how a detail like this could slip through the cracks. Because, before you jump me, Apollo and Artemis being twins is a detail that is not said explicitly in the original text as often as you might think. Probably just because the ancient writer assumes that the ancient audience already knows and they don't have to make it explicit. It's probably explicit in the Homeric hymn to Apollo and and in the Theogony, but I would have to go back to check. But oftentimes their mythologies are separate from each other. They're not always together. When they're introduced, sometimes the words like siblings are used instead of twin. So like the word twin doesn't come up as often for them as you might think. And a professor might not say it because a professor might also assume that the students already know, and so they just wouldn't say it. So in my best faith reading of this scenario, I can see a reality in which this is just an honest mistake, just something that fell through the cracks. Because at the end of the day, it is one detail in a sea of details, and I don't think it should be taken as like the smoking gun that negates the work and accomplishment that she has. What I do think is that it's a little bit alarming that the author did not even read the Wikipedia page of someone's just writing into her story. And I know that ancient Greece is a long time ago and they're all dead now and whatever, but I feel really strongly that if you are adapting real religious figures or real cultural figures, especially from a culture to which you do not belong, you owe a certain basic amount of respect to that culture and to that people, and reading the Wikipedia or an encyclopedia entry on the characters is not even meeting the threshold of the bare minimum. And I have been feeling that way about a lot of retellings, honestly, and maybe I'll talk about that in a dedicated video, so should stick around if you're interested. And you know what, maybe an hour after this interview she realized that she actually did know and had just panicked because she was public speaking and like it's stressful to give an interview, but it does raise some red flags. So Alexis is running through the woods. Now we're in the perspective of, I forgot if it was Augustus or Charon, but we're in one of their perspectives. They're chasing after her, and I want to say 2 pages later, all of the men have cornered her. Like this, if this were playing out in real life, I'm saying this is under 5 minutes how quickly they're like really on her. So not a great start. Achilles and Patroclus are trying to get her to come with them, saying like, oh, you know, we didn't trick you into getting married, so you should come with us. Augustus and Charon are saying, no, you should come with us because we tricked you into getting married, so now you're our wife and now you have to come with us anyway. So I mean, was I supposed to feel any amount of tension that she would actually have to complete this task? No. One of the Gorgon guys is also chasing her, Hermos, and Charon shoots him in the brain and it explodes. He's fine though. So this is when Alexis reaches this clearing. Again, it's been 2 minutes, so I really don't think that she's cleared the amount of space that she has before she's allowed to leap away, but she leaps away. And Charon like grabs onto her so that when she does, he goes with her. And they're in this open field in Montana where she's from, so now they're able to talk. And Charon says, like, oh, things have been so tough for me. I have a quote for you, hang on. This is in chapter 2. Charon says, you don't understand. I said through gritted teeth. It wasn't like that. The Olympians, the oppression. Girl, what are you talking about? I feel like the world building around this is just so shallow that I don't even, like, what are you talking about? What is the oppression? What are the systematic, the political, economic barriers that you were facing? Because I have no idea what this structure of power even is that you're struggling within. I don't know what is going on. Like, what are you talking about? And I really hate this because it feels a little bit like the book is relying on me to do the work of like backfilling what oppression is based on my understanding of oppression in real life, and to characterize how Charon has been treated. I hope that made sense. But like, I feel like it's asking me to do the legwork to understand why he's being such a dick right now. And I don't know why he's being a dick. I don't know what oppression he's faced. And also the way that they talk about growing up in the Chthonic society, like Pat is talking about how he got tortured as a child. Augustus is talking about how his dad made everybody in his house get a facial scar. I'm afraid to say, but I think the call is coming from inside the house, because they're all really intense and hardcore and really strong and masculine, so they all have to have really intense and hardcore and masculine backstories, tragic backstories, and they all kind of have to one-up each other with how bad their tragic backstory is, so we just get the most like absurdly, ludicrously ridiculous tragic backstories. Like, it gets to a point where like, okay, That's all I have to say. So Charon tells her, I'm trying to be a better man for you. News to me? News to me? What are you talking about? In what way? Elaborate. I said this in my last video too. I don't mind that the characters are bad people because it's a dark romance, and I kind of expect that of them. I don't expect them to be good people, but they don't have any chemistry, and I don't even understand why they like each other. And also, like, this is such a ridiculous statement to make, and it just feels like it's aimed at appeasing people who don't like romantic leads to be bad people, trying to give him this kind of morally gray quality without actually having any actions to back that up, because it just really rings false, because it's like you're just saying words, there's no action to support this. And it's not a complexity of the character. Like, this doesn't add character complexity. It's not a layer being added to the character, because we don't see him make any effort to be better and then fail. Like, that would be one thing if he was trying and failing to be better for her, but he's not. He's not doing any of that. I could get behind that, but he's not doing that. He's just portrayed in a very, like, one-note way. And so, like, this isn't true. This just isn't true. It's not character complexity, it's just rewriting the character. And she tells him, oh, you just want me physically. This is only a physical thing for you. And this pisses him off so bad that he, like, lunges at her and grabs her. Really great sign. And so he's holding on to her, and he's like, don't fucking say that. And she shoots him twice. She fires 2 shots. I need to reiterate, he's holding on to her. She fires 2 shots, misses. What are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? I'm going to need a physicist to explain to me what possible trajectory those bullets could have been on that they would miss at this rate. And I think that it actually is a continuity error, because the next thing he does is shows her how to, like, hold a gun and the stance to take. You don't have to do that if he's holding on to you, and you can put the gun right up to his side. I'm getting a little bit graphic. So Alexis takes out a taser and tases him, apparently with enough voltage that he's doing the, like, cartoon thing where his skeleton is showing, and he starts forcibly making out with her, and electricity is sparking off of them both. And I should let you know at this point that Nyx the Invisible Snake is also here. Her only function in the story, like, I'll forget that she's there, and then all of a sudden she'll make some kind of quip. It's her only, this is really, like, the primary function of this character is to make quips. And I got into some trouble in my previous video because I talked about the millennial humor in the previous book, so I'm gonna tone it down for that one, for that this time. But Nyx has 2 kinds of jokes. They are millennial humor and recycled TikTok jokes, and that is the only kind of joke she knows how to make. And I hate her so much. I had somehow gotten it into my head that something happened to her at the end of the last book and that she wouldn't be here anymore, but I think that I straight up think that that was just wistful thinking. I think that I made that up in my head to like repress that memory to encourage myself to read this book. There's also Fluffy Jr. is her dog. He's this little, like, crusty white dog. Or at least that's kind of how I picture him. I hope you guys know what I mean when I say crusty white dog. He's there a lot of the time. He's not there right now, but he is frequently also there. And he will actually be significant, so just keep in mind she also has some fuck-ass dog. So she tries to teleport home, but she's really injured, so she kind of fucks it up, and she accidentally goes to the underworld, which is a prison in this universe, and she hears a woman screaming, and then she blacks out. And her dad finds her, Hades, in Crete, and so he's able to get her to medical attention, all that. And the doctor is described as wearing the rod of Asclepius, framed by wings. This is my wings, not quotation marks, but I think it's funny because the rod of Asclepius doesn't have wings, but the caduceus does, and the rod of Asclepius is the ancient symbol of medicine, which is later conflated with the caduceus in a lot of modern symbols of medicine. I think a lot of modern places have realized that they fucked this up and no longer use it, but for a very long time, the caduceus is kind of the typical symbol of medicine in the modern age. So my question is it the rod of Asclepius? because I get that maybe the design in the book is a little bit different, and we actually do get kind of a description of this later on in the book, so I'm gonna come back to it. It really sounds like you're just describing the thing that the rod of Asclepius has historically been mistaken for, in which case maybe it kind of sounds like you're also making the same mistake that is very famously made. And the rod of Asclepius thing does get explained a little bit later, but I do still have to bring it up because it just is a little curious. Hades is there, he's watching over her. Ares is also there, I kind of forgot why, but he's also there, and so Augustus is seeing him, this is his dad, and we get an internal chapter from him, POV chapter from him, and he's thinking about how his dad, first of all, like makes everybody in their house get a facial scar, and then 1 page later, I rubbed at my facial scar, the one he gave me. At the beginning of this chapter, 1 page ago, he already said that his dad made everybody in their house get a facial scar. So this is what I mean about like kind of reiterating information that has already been made clear. Like, I got it. I got it, girl. You don't have to tell me again. I just read that. I'm not going to forget it yet. And I think that kind of goes back to the skimmability and brain rot that the author talked about in her interview, just like being something that is apparent in the writing style. And then I also was thinking about this facial scar thing, and I have to talk about it. It reminded me of this scene from Game of Thrones where Theon is talking to his dad, and he's wearing this really nice armor, and his dad asks him, did you pay the iron price or the gold price for it? And Theon has to admit to him that he bought the armor, he paid the gold price. And so his dad goes on this little rant about how I only wear the armor that I take off of the bodies of the men that I kill. I pay the iron price. And I feel like that's the kind of mentality that Ares should have, like a person like Ares should have, because if you're just giving out facial scars to everybody with the intention, I assume, of just making it look like they're a fighter or making it look like they're really dangerous, then like it's not earned. You know, it isn't something that is actually representative of real danger or real accomplishment and survival of that danger. And I feel like it would make more thematic sense if he had gotten that scar in like a training match, or if Ares had pushed Augustus into fighting something that he wasn't ready for when he was too young and he got the scar as a result, or even if it was like a Zuko from Avatar thing where his dad did give him the scar, but it wasn't just out of aesthetics. Because also, like, if everybody has a facial scar, then nobody has a facial scar, you know what I mean? He also talks about how his dad never forgave him for taking over the weapons company and renaming it. And now I want to remind you of the character profiles, which all individually say that the 4 dudes co-founded Wisdol. No, they didn't. Augustus took over from his dad. That's a different thing. And then also in this chapter, we find out that now that the marriage bond like strengthens their abilities. So now whenever he uses his abilities, blood drips out of his eyes. Because as you know, this is the most intense, hardcore, serious, big, giant, intense, hardcore guy who's ever lived. So how do we make him more intense than he was last book? Well, we gotta get some blood in his eyes. Something I do like about the book, though, is that we're getting a lot more Hades and Persephone mentions, especially in the beginning half. We get more of Alexis's time with them. In the previous book, something that I didn't like is that we find out that she is related to Hades and Persephone almost like immediately before she has to go marry Augustus and Charon. And so there's really not any time between her finding that out and her having to go marry these guys, so we don't actually get to see that relationship. And so I do like that it is included in this book. I know there was a bonus chapter in the previous book that was her and Hades and Persephone like having a moment, but I didn't read it because I didn't want to, and because I think that the book should be able to stand on its own. And so as they're waiting for Alexis to be okay, Hades won't let them go in. Augustus and Charon and Achilles and Patroclus have this like machismo fight about who should actually be with Alexis. And I do start to feel like everybody has kind of the same personality, and that personality is just like mean, and also the same kind of mean. And it hurts also that there's 4 of them, because first of all, like, that's a pretty big number, and also like they're all being presented as the most intense, big, huge, enormous, large, giant, big, intense, hardcore, big, severe, big, giant dudes ever. And if they're all being described like that, it just kind of loses weight, because it's like, well, how am I supposed to take you as seriously as I'm taking Augustus, as I'm taking Charon, as I'm taking Achilles, as I'm taking Patroclus? You can't all be at this level that I should take you so seriously. There's no kind of power scaling, you know what I mean? There's no kind of understanding that, okay, like, this guy is on top and everybody else is lower down. And I think that it would be really helpful if the characters had a little bit more differentiation in what their abilities are and what their strengths and weaknesses are, because they're all just like big guys with muscles who shoot guns, which, first of all, you've already lost me. Like, I just can't see that as attractive. I really like me looking at these overly aggressive, hyper masculine, extremely like irritable, violent men, and seeing them just like when somebody looks at Alexis, doesn't even say any kind of thing to her, they're like, I'm gonna fucking kill that guy. I really just like can't see that as attractive. It doesn't come off as protective. It doesn't come off as romantic or loving to me. It comes off as honestly fucking crazy. It just comes off like you are insane. Like you are, and I think that I also just have like a really short tolerance for it right now, and I just really don't have I was really fatigued, honestly, by gun violence and by hyper masculine men running around with guns and shooting people. I said this in the previous book too, that I wish they weren't using guns, and I wish it was like a more traditional Greek mythology weapon kind of thing, because I just, for me, especially like in this climate, I think the gun violence thing just is so loaded always, and I can't really get past it, and I can never really I can't view it as attractive, because I see it on my phone every time I turn it on. I see people shot by ice every time I turn on my phone. So like, no, it's difficult for me to see that on my phone and then read a chapter of this book and be like, yeah, it's so hot that he wants to kill everybody who's ever looked at her. And I think it would also help if maybe the men had different weapons, like if Achilles classically uses a spear, if maybe Patroclus had a sword, if we had some kind of variation in it. Because first of all, you don't have to have big muscle, you don't have to be 6'7" and 290 pounds or whatever to shoot a gun. Yeah, I feel like if they all had kind of their own thing, something to differentiate themselves from one another. I'm going to do something unforgivable and look at the original text. In the Iliad, Achilles is unique because, first of all, he has this really unique relationship to the gods because of his mom. He's able to call in some divine favors, but also he's really fast, and he has this kind of berserker mode that he goes into. Well, Odysseus is special because he is very smart and he does a lot of the strategizing. That's kind of where he shines the most, not necessarily in the same way that Achilles does, but still being both under the category of big, strong warrior man. They still have qualities that separate themselves from each other. And like Hector, another character in the Iliad, also a big, strong warrior man, also kind of fights in the same general style as the rest of the men, but we see a different aspect of him because he has these domestic scenes where he goes home and he talks to his wife and he holds his baby. We see different aspects of each one of these characters, and we're able to connect to them in different ways. We're able to tell them apart from each other in ways that are really unique, and we have these certain associations with each of them. And it just makes it easier to even know who's talking in a scene, honestly, if you have some kind of quality about each of the characters that is different. I found this meme that I think really exemplifies my feelings on a lot of the characters, and that is this Helsa meme. I don't know if this was created by a child or the funniest person alive, but this is how I feel like a lot of the characters end up looking, where you just like take the characters and it's like, how can I make them the most hardcore they've ever been? More hardcore than anyone who's ever lived and anyone who's ever existed in any literary canon. I know, Helsa. Something that remains from the previous book, I'm pretty sure it was in the previous book. It's so bizarre that I have to bring it up. I don't remember if I brought it up in my previous video or not, but there is this kind of running, I want to say running gag about this organ harvesting ring that Alexis refers to. I guess just because this is in like a post-apocalyptic world, some people have resorted to organ harvesting, and I mean, it's really largely played for humor. It's not like a genuine threat. There's a scene where she mentions the warehouses where they used to store the harvested organs. You can't do that. And it's just like a lot. It's a lot of organ harvesting jokes. But anyway, so we're back home to Augustus's house, and like the four men, they're having this machismo fight. They're about to shoot each other. And then Patroclus interrupts and he says, guys, Medusa has escaped the underworld and she killed 2 Olympians. We don't really give a fuck about the 2 Olympians she killed. I don't think they ever even get named. Pat is racist to the Gorgons. Medusa is obviously a Gorgon, and he is very racist to them. And this remains throughout the entire... It's actually significant. Augustus tells us that Medusa has the power of fate, which I assume just means she can see the future. And Charon is like looking through the newspaper, and he talks about this headline that says a doctor did a transplant putting human body parts onto a Spartan. Is now the time. We were talking about something else, and I wrote in my notes that I think this will be Chekhov's transplant. I write my notes as I read the book. I wrote that I think it will be Chekhov's transplant, and there is a transplant that happens later on in the book, but it's not between a human and a Spartan. So I don't really... I guess that was the payoff for this, but like it's kind of a completely different situation. So they all have to go stay at Augustus's house until Medusa is found. All of them are grown adults, like they could do whatever they wanted, but they all have to go stay at Augustus's house until she's found. It actually isn't as much of a plot contrivance as it sounds like. I know it sounds like they just, need to all be in the same room or whatever, but actually not that much comes of it. So, however, while they're there, one night Alexis finds this woman, Sarah's, in like the torture dungeon that they just have in their Italian villa. And Sarah's in the previous book was the lady who helped Theros knock off Zeus's offspring, and Alexis wants to free her and says, hey Patroclus, since you have this lie detector powers, why don't you ask her if she did that? And so he asks her if she did that, and he's like, She says that she didn't do it, and he says, she's not lying. Something strange is afoot. And damn. So they free Sarah's. It starts yet another dick measuring competition between the 4 men. A Xanax prescription would... She and Drex is also there. The people who are in this, like the people who are in any given scene at any given time, is honestly kind of anybody's guess. They really just get brought up as they're relevant. So Drex is also there, and she and Drex, like, the way this scene was written really it really confused me why they even went to this bunker in the first place, because it seemed to me like they just stumbled into it randomly one night and like weren't asked to come. They just kind of found it one night. But anyway, they get there, everybody is there, they're wearing white, and they're gonna hide in this fake forest to let Alexis and Drex practice shooting. Alexis does really badly, and this really pisses off Charon. And I forgot to say, her dog is there, and the dog keeps eating twigs and vomiting them up. I really thought that was going to be plot. For some reason, I was like, I bet this will be plot relevant. I don't know why I thought that. It's just a dumb joke. So she's doing really badly, and Charon is like, statistically, girl, you gotta hit something at some point. How are you this bad? at it. And so the same man who said that I'm trying to be a better man for you, just starts like choking her out, like choke slams her, and he's using his mind powers to let her hear his thoughts. You can fill in what you think his thoughts are. And she's telling him, oh, I told you it was just physical. And he's like, you're wrong. You have done nothing to convince me. I'm like on her side right now, and I don't like siding with her. I don't like siding with anybody in this book. She's right in this situation. She's absolutely right. And so anyway, so this is all happening. We get this chapter from Patroclus's perspective. He's insufferable, and so he's crying in the shower because he wishes that he had gotten married to Alexis and he wanted this to happen. It's like kind of, I mean, it kind of makes sense because like he and Achilles want to be together, but they're not allowed to get married to each other, which is like, hello, this ancient Greece. You're telling me that they haven't progressed to legalizing gay marriage? So he kind of wants to be able to marry Alexis so that he and Achilles can also stay in a relationship and like they can be a throuple, which kind of makes sense. He is a dick about it, but he and Achilles also like in the shower. And so if you're looking for it, Patroclus is a character that I talked about in the previous book because I think that the way he's handled is really odd, and I'm not trying to make some kind of sweeping statement about how it is intentional or anything, but let me just lay out what I think is odd. Patroclus is black. He's the only character of the male love interest who is described as black, and Achilles has a muzzle, so he doesn't talk. And so Patroclus is the one who really like leads a lot of the interactions with Alexis. He's extremely aggressive and combative and just like hot-headed, which is true of all the men. So I should clarify that. It is true of all the men, but because he's the one who's more active in the conversations, it means that Achilles is very frequently the one who is placating him and who is like making him calm down, which I think is weird because, I mean, Achilles is arguably defined by his anger. It is the first word of the Iliad. The meaning of the Iliad is the wrath of Achilles is like the first thing you hear about in the Iliad. And so I think it's weird to kind of switch that about them and make Patroclus be black. Patroclus is also related to Aphrodite, Helen, and Augustus, and none of them are described as being black. They're all white. So I just think it's a weird choice to have, like, he's the only black one. He's got this, like, very aggressive and angry character trait, which is true of all the men in the story, but it's at the expense of Achilles now being the one who is more rationalizing and who is calming him down and like talking him down very often. And I get that they're not their mythological counterparts. Like, it's definitely, it kind of is and isn't, because I think the book does mean to evoke the relationship that the audience is already familiar with between Achilles and Patroclus, but it obviously isn't a one-to-one. So I just think it's weird, and I'm not trying to say that it is like an intentional microaggression or anything, but I think it still is one. I also think that the author could get a little bit more creative with how Achilles' sign language is described. So he uses sign language because he can't talk, and it's basically just dialogue. It's really like indistinguishable from dialogue, except that the dialogue tag says signed instead of said. And I don't really take issue necessarily, like I know that ASL and different sign languages have a different grammar structure than its spoken language. I don't think it needs to be like that. I just feel like there could be more attention given to actually like describing the sign and what he's physically doing with his sign, because sometimes there's like an ellipsis in his dialogue, and it's like, so what does that mean? When you're signing, I assume he pauses, but wouldn't it be more effective and more like embodying what's happening if you described what he's doing physically, and instead of just having a ... what the, and like sometimes the words will be italicized. It's like I assume that he's just like doing a grand gesture with this sign, but it would be cool to see that described. But you know, if you use sign language and you have an opinion on it, please let me know, because I mean, who am I to say? The book does technically have a lot of disability rep because Alexis is half deaf and blind and Achilles is mute, but I feel like it really doesn't come up that much. It's really easy to overlook and just honestly ignore because it's not really mentioned that much. Alexis doesn't have any kind of obstacles because of it. And sometimes it's like, oh, something's in my blind spot. I can't, I don't know, hear this as well. But it's not something that she consistently has to manage. It's not something that poses like a real difficulty to her. It's just kind of something that is mentioned when it's convenient, honestly. And Achilles' dialogue really just reads like dialogue, so it would be very easy to just forget that he's doing it in sign. So there is a lot of disability rep, but I feel like it could be shown with a little bit more intention. So they go to Alexis, and Patroclus is like, hey girl, listen, I can help you divorce your husbands because I've been researching about marriage bonds, and all you have to do is use your blood magic to bring them right to the brink of death, and then it will break the oath. Girl, what are you talking about? Why would that work? So here's my theory. My theory is that it has something to do with the like until death do us part of marriage vows. I don't know if they said that in the previous book, but I'm not going to go back and check. So I'm just backfilling, assuming that they say till death do us part in the marriage vows. But if they only get to the brink of death, then they didn't actually die. So the oath isn't fulfilled. And like also, why the fuck would this work? Alexis does not ask, which is crazy to me, because he said that he's been researching. So presumably, he has some kind of like court case or document or something that he can show her to, it just got really dark, that he can show her to say, this is why this would work. This is the legal precedent. This is the logic that I'm following. And we'd never get that. And she doesn't ask. And nobody asks throughout the entire thing. Like, nobody wants to know. And I want to know. Because what are you talking about? This was such an insane thing to say and then not follow up on. And Alexis is like, no, this is just, you have your own motivations behind this. I know that this isn't legitimate. And he's like, no, that's not true. And he's a really bad liar about it. And he has the word liar tattooed across his knuckles, so it bothers me that he's a bad liar. And he gets really mad at her and tries to attack her. And Achilles pulls him back. Again, weird. And he takes a little vial of her blood. And she doesn't fight back about this at all. And so remember, her blood is where her power comes from, or like what activates her power. So keep that in mind. Achilles also realizes that she can read sign because she responds to something that he signs rather than like something that is spoken. And she tells him like, oh, the reason I didn't tell you about this is because I was scared of you. And like you were awful to me. And they both act brand fucking new. Like this is just news. What did you think was going on? I also have to assume that you scaring her was intentional. So what the fuck did you think was gonna happen? Anyway, and again, I don't mind that they're bad people. It kind of frustrates me that the narrative refuses to own up to that. And Achilles has this part in the next chapter where he's talking about like, Patroclus just wants the three of us to be happy together. No, the fuck he doesn't. It just feels a little bit like wanting to have your cake and eat it too by saying like, oh, he calls her a pathetic worm who should die, but also he wants to have a happily ever after with her. Like, can we actually give him a redeemable quality, or can we just admit that he's not a good person? Like, can we go one way or the other? I forgot to tell you that she got to choose her partners for the first Titan mission, and she chose Achilles and Patroclus instead of Augustus and Charon. Drama. You might be thinking, at the beginning of this book, she said she was going to get revenge on them. Is she still going to do that? We haven't talked about it in a while. So their first mission is to Rome. That's why I wore my shirt today, to represent, to be on theme. And she's really nervous about her first mission, so she's asking Patroclus all these questions, what to expect, what's going on with the Titans, what's the vibe. And he tells her, I have a quote for you guys, every Titan is not the same. It's not that deep. So if they're all not the same, then it sounds like the issue is complex and there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, and you have to be all right with kind of different nuances and different approaches to different situations, and that the issue is actually more complex than she thought it was. But this is consistent with people who say it's not that deep. So they're going to Rome to hunt down this titan, and when they get there, they find this titan and he has wings, which is not something that titans usually do. And I don't think that we ever follow up on this about, like, why does this titan have wings? Why are they mutating? Pretty sure we don't follow up on that. So she sees this titan, she sees that it has wings, she's like, fuck. So Patroclus gets fucked up immediately by this titan. I mean, first hit, he slams into a wall, breaks his neck. I was like, shit, he is dead. Holy shit, that's great. I didn't think we were gonna kill people in this book. He's not dead. Achilles grabs him and he looks at Alexis and he teleports away, leaving her to deal with the titan by herself. Funny. Head bowed, hands clasped together, tears streamed down my muzzle. That's the funniest thing I've ever read. That's so fucking funny. Are we joking? Because if we're joking, I will forgive you. If this is a joke, this is a work of genius. I also don't understand why Achilles can't take off his muzzle when he's fighting the Titans to use his voice torture ability, details unknown, because it seems like the time to do so, if there ever was one. I know that Patroclus has the key, so it's in the room. We could just, I just feel like, because he does, spoiler alert, he does take it off later in the book for something that is exponentially less serious than an actual fight with an actual thing that he needs to be doing to help people. So I feel like now's the time. But anyway, Alexis has to fight the Titan by herself. She does okay. She's like beating it up a little bit. It's also beating the shit out of her. There's actually two of them. And the people of Rome are so happy to see her beat up this Titan. They're all cheering for her. And she's low-key not doing that good of a job at it. This old man in the crowd calls her Salvator, in Latin, which is savior. I guess he's still using Latin. Just kidding. There is a feminine form of this word, salvatrix. So I don't know why he would use the masculine. The masculine is more common. It's, because of all the Christian religious texts, which is probably why she uses this word specifically, honestly. But there is a feminine form. So it's a little bit odd to me that he wouldn't use that. And I had this thought earlier because Augustus calls her Mycaris, which is masculine. And it's another one of those things that's like, technically you're right. Like with Plato's Symposium, it's like, technically I can see the argument. Technically true, but it's like a little bit off. Because as a noun, this word is typically masculine, but it's also typically not a noun. It's typically an adjective. The noun form is pretty infrequent. The adjective spelled the exact same way, but it does gender. So it has a feminine form, and the book recognizes this because Charon calls her carissima, which is the same word in the feminine superlative ending. So cara being the feminine root, and then issima being the feminine superlative ending, the most dear. So it's the same word, but Augustus is using it in the masculine noun, and Charon is using it in the feminine adjective. And the same grammatical structure in English. So I think it's a little bit weird, but it's like I can technically see why Augustus would do this in English. Latin is a language that has evolved a lot, right? Because you have very early classical Latin, and then you have ecclesiastical Latin, and you have modern revamping of Latin. So it undergoes a lot of different grammar rules, and especially in the beginning with classical Latin, the rules are kind of fluid. The world won't explode if you change them a little bit. So I really don't see why it isn't gendered. I don't see why Augustus wouldn't just call her Cara, especially because Charon is already calling her Carissima, which is the same word, but is gendered. I was gonna let it go because it's technically, you're right. Technically, I can see it. But then we also got Salvator, and then in a second, we're also gonna get Angelus Romae, Angel of Rome, which is also masculine. I just don't understand. Like, there is a feminine form of angel as well. Again, not as common as the masculine form, but you could just gender it. It wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't break the rules of the language. It would be completely understandable. And it's weird that all of these words are masculine. Like, if it was just one of them, when it was just chorus, I was like, okay, whatever. But now that it's multiple, many words, I have to ask what's going on. They also start calling her this before she's actually beaten the Titan, which does feel like jumping the gun a little bit. This was also when I started to notice the overuse of the word ruined. So once somebody gets hurt in the book, that body part or the entirety of their body is described as being ruined. My ruined limbs. And once you see it, it's really hard not to. There's a couple of phrases that once you see it, it's kind of hard not to. But like oftentimes it'll be this word is used multiple times in a single page. Again, where is the editor? HarperCollins, did the money run dry? Do you need me to get in there and do the final pass of the editing? Because I'm not available. Or maybe I am, if you give me the right amount of money. So she has the ability to teleport away, right? She can just leave, and she doesn't want to because she doesn't want to need a man. So she's gonna fight this Titan. She doesn't beat it, and then Augustus and Charon show up and they save her anyway. So she does need a man. Really feminist literature here. She really does need a man. They show up, and we're reminded again that Alexis in the previous book said that she was asexual, because the way that I guess this book thinks it's funny to have her look at Augustus and be like, oh, he's so hot. I can't believe I ever thought I was asexual. I love representation. So her ear gets cut off at some point in this fight, and Charon just sits next to her, cuts his own ear off, and starts sewing it onto her ear hole. Sure, girl. And so this is the transplant that I was talking about, that it's between two Spartans. So it's not between a Spartan and a human. So I feel like it's not the payoff for what was set up earlier, but it is the only time that this happens. So they're like, oh, your Spartan healing will allow it if we do it fast enough. So sure, whatever. But I also don't really understand how it's possible that Alexis became half blind and half deaf as a child anyway. They say at some point that her Spartan healing hadn't kicked in yet because she was so young, but why would that be the case? Because we learn later in the book that her blood powers had kicked in when she was a baby, but the healing powers hadn't. I really don't understand that. It just kind of feels like a little bit of a plot hole that had to be patched kind of haphazardly. Because the Gorgon guy, Hermos, that I told you at the very beginning in the first chapter or second chapter, got his brain exploded. It's described as his brain exploded. He's fine. But Alexis can't heal her inner ear. And then I was just talking about gendering, because in this scene, Charon says carissimos, which is masculine, the same word. And I'm going to read you the scene. Per angusta ad augusta carissimos, he whispered, through trials a triumph, my dear, and it should be my dearest. Augustus appeared, and Charon leaned back to give him space. So the way that I'm reading that is that Augustus isn't there when he says it. So if the masculine ending was supposed to be referring to Augustus, he's not there. And I did a word search for this, and this is the only time the masculine ending shows up in the book for this word. So it's not something that he routinely calls Augustus. It's the word that he calls Alexis, but it's masculine in this scene and no other scene. You could let me know what you think about it. I think it's weird. She and Charon have this love confession, which would be great if he seemed like he liked her even a little bit ever, or if she seemed like she liked him even a little bit ever. And like, Charon is obviously a delusional, but I'm a little bit mad that Alexis would profess her love to him after she said that she wanted revenge on him and then did nothing towards achieving that goal. We get this very Catholic coded scene of Charon carrying her through the crowd, and she's described as looking angelic, and her blonde hair is like a halo, which, like, I love Catholic imagery as much as the next guy. I think it's fun, but what's going on? It's a little bit weird here. Anyway, Augustus takes the Titans alive. It actually will come up again. And I feel like we could have gotten a little bit more explanation as to, like, what the Titans are. Because I low-key thought that they were, like, enormous. And that could be my bad. Because they're described as having a 20-foot wingspan. So with my knowledge, I was like, well, he's probably about 20 feet tall as well. I don't know where I pulled that from, but that's what I thought. And then Augustus just takes them to a dinky little basement in a safe house and they fit, so they're probably not 20 feet tall. Augustus does have this trait that I haven't talked about, which is that he is sexist. He thinks that women shouldn't fight because they don't have that physical ability. He thinks that they're too delicate. And this mixed with all the Catholic imagery, I think is a little bit weird because it kind of feels at times like the narrative doesn't want you to think that's a bad thing, but he is a sexist. So just kind of keep that in mind. I've been thinking about this, and the primary offensive move that the Spartans have against the Titans, what Patroclus and Achilles and Alexis all do, is that they shoot it with guns. And first of all, it doesn't do shit. Second of all, if that is your primary, first and foremost attack, why does it matter if you're a Spartan or not? How does the Spartan blood help you? I know that it, like, makes you physically stronger and stuff, but, like, anybody can shoot a gun. And I guess it probably helps that, they have Wisdol, so they probably have, like, a monopoly on weapon production or something like that. But, Alexis is from Montana. You're telling me nobody has a gun there? And also, none of their powers are really helpful for any of this. Like, Patroclus is a lie detector. This is not a combat ability. Augustus has this, like, or I think Charon has emotional manipulation. How is this gonna help us in it? So sometimes it's like, I feel like the powers could have been a little bit more thought out, and they could have been a little bit more plot relevant. And I shouldn't have used Patroclus as an example because his power will become plot relevant, but the other ones, I feel like they could have been selected a little bit more with the plot in mind. So Alexis has to confess that she's actually half deaf because she got this transplant from Charon, and she's like, oh, it was for nothing because I'm still half deaf and I still can't hear out of it, sorry. And Augustus is really torn up about this. He can't believe that he was being so mean to her and so hard on her when she was actually legitimately struggling. It's just so difficult for me to give a fuck about a grown man discovering empathy, to be honest. Anyway, he and Charon decide that they're going to go to the trailer park where Alexis is from, and they discover the concept of domestic violence there. They've enacted domestic violence, so I'm not sure why they're shocked, but we discover that Alexis's foster dad is still alive in the only human prison in the Northern Hemisphere. So, hey, if the apocalypse did one thing for us in America, it was solve our mass incarceration problem. Thank you. They found this bad guy there in the trailer park, and he has these satanic symbols tattooed on him. Again, the Catholic overtones. And then he leaps away. He teleports away, and Augustus and Charon are so shocked. They're like, that was some kind of primordial being. That was crazy. My theory, I'll let you guys lock in your theories as well. My theory was that it was Kronos, because Kronos is the god that the Spartan, I don't know if he's a god, I guess, but like the Spartans worship. So whenever somebody would say like, oh my god, they'll say like, oh, Kronos, he's like their god, I guess. Or that it was chaos, because Kronos isn't a primordial deity, but it also Doesn't fucking matter because Artemis is an Athenic deity, nor is Aphrodite for that matter. So, like, it actually doesn't really matter what the distinctions are. I thought that maybe it could be Kronos because it would feel plot relevant. Or maybe Chaos. I don't know why I had this theory, because I guess maybe just because he's primordial, I thought that. I feel like maybe there was something in the plot that made me think, oh, it could be Chaos, but I forgot what it was. I'll let you lock in your answer, let you think about what you think this guy is, and we will find out in the next book, I guess, because this does not get brought up again. But Augustus, he's so distraught about what he's witnessing in this trailer park, and he says in his internal narration, the protective urges, the unholy madness was making it hard to think. No. When you have an aside inside of two M dashes, that does not influence the subject of the sentence. So urges is still the subject and the verb should be plural. Subject verb agreement. Editor. But the men, they're crashing out. In chapter 20, Augustus has this like little bit of internal narration where he just says, so much fucking rage. Take an edible. Hey, I don't know where you are right now. I don't know what the laws are regarding substances, but I know one that would really help you. And they give her this gift, which is a graphing calculator because she's a math nerd. And so she wants a graphing calculator. I was kind of thinking to myself, like, if she's so good at math, why does she need a calculator? Maybe she should be making the graphs in her head. But I mean, I'm not a math nerd, so maybe it's normal to have. I only took through Calc 2, which that's as far as I got. Even that was deeply unnecessary for my degree, and honestly, I only took it because I was annoyed that my engineering friends were acting like it was so hard. But anyway, the calculator has a little voice memo thing, so she can like record her diary entries and like make voice notes to herself, so that's fun. It's multi-purpose. Put it in your back pocket because we will come back to it. We go back to the house where Alexis is with Helen, and Charlie is still there, her brother. I know that I don't think I've said his name once in this video, because he's deeply, deeply irrelevant to the plot. And then Helen is also there, and they're watching over Sarah's. Sarah's is having memory problems, and so she's like trying to remember things. She's working through it, and she finds this symbol, and she describes it as an umlaut. I'm really not sure why she describes it as an umlaut. This is what it is. I thought she was reading German, but she calls it an umlaut. I guess maybe the clouds could be the umlaut part. And you know, that looks like the rod of Asclepius. It looks like the rod of Asclepius with some little clouds. And so my theory at this point in the book, when I was writing, oh my god, I've been talking for a long time. When I was writing my notes, was that maybe over time the clouds morphed into wings, and that's why we have this conflation between the rod of Asclepius and what seems to be the caduceus of Hermes. So just keep it in mind. Also, Sarah has written in her notes these words: Zeus plus Vico, Hercules, ? Assassination, ? And Alexis remembers that Vico was the guy who said that she got kidnapped by Titans when she was a baby. I need to tell you this now, and I need you to remember it, because this is the only mention and the only bit of foreshadowing we get until a very major plot reveal. And you might have already guessed it, because I've told you that it's important. But when I say, like, this plot reveal happens, I think, like, 300 pages later. So I had completely forgotten about it and was confused. You need to remember it, though. And you might be thinking, who is Vico? I don't know. He's the guy who said that she got kidnapped as a baby. What more do you need? He's not a character in the story. He doesn't, like, show up in the story. I don't know that he showed up in the previous book. He might be dead. I'm not totally sure. It was a little bit unclear to me personally where he is and in what state he is, but just remember his name. Augustus and Charon kidnap Achilles and Patroclus and try to like brute force Alexis into taking revenge on them for leaving her with the Titan in Rome. In Rome. And they have their insane strategy to get her to take revenge on them is being like, yeah, well, you're outnumbered and we have weapons and you have no weapons, so you're gonna have to take revenge on them. And so Nyx decides to reveal herself. Nyx is apparently a class 7 dangerous beast and is as dangerous as a Titan. I don't know what the power scale is, so this is just number soup to me. Maybe if they gave us a ranking out of 100, as they did in the character profiles, I would have a better understanding. But it's like, I just saw Alexis, of all people, almost defeat a Titan. 2 Titans. And then Augustus and Charon came and cleaned it up for her, so I mean, class 7 can't be that high. And Alexis is thinking like, oh, he's gonna mansplain to me about Nyx. And then he actually does tell her things that she didn't know. So it's like, girl, you're embarrassing us. But anyway, they say, okay, focus up. Let's get on topic. We found this vial of blood that Patroclus has, and we know that he wants you to use it on us to make us break the marriage bond. And Charon is like, I know this also because he has this like soul bond or something with his hellhounds, or they like share a consciousness. It's not really explained, but they all speak in one voice at some point, which I do think is cool. And I think that he should use this power more often. And so he starts like, they just like kind of go ballistic at this point, and Augustus is pouring the blood into 2 little cups so that they can drink it and she can use her power against them. And they start taunting her. The way that they try to get her to kill them is crazy. Let me just go for it. Man up, sweetheart, and pull the trigger. For once, hit your fucking target. And then a little bit later, don't tell us you're backing out now that we're giving you exactly what you want. Take the offering. Have your divorce. Murder us! Or were you waiting for the men to handle it? Charon pointed across the table at my mentors. Hang on. And now you're too afraid to do it for yourself? And I know that Augustus is sexist, but I mean, whoa. Remember that they also still haven't told us why this would work. And they never will. So she's thinking about it, and she starts like kind of intuitively activating her powers, and it starts like they're like screaming on the ground and crawling around. And she decides that she's not going to kill them. She's not going to take revenge. And to me, it felt a little bit unearned because I feel like we kind of dropped the ball on the whole revenge plotline so early that it's like, if this had been something that she had in the back of her mind the whole time and that she was considering every step of the way and everything they did, she was weighing this over whether or not she was going to take revenge on them, then I could see this being a real payoff moment. But instead it just didn't feel like that. Anyway, they have to go do the initiation massacre, which I didn't know about until they mentioned it now, which is this like I guess it like starts off the Colosseum games or something, and they haven't been preparing for it at all, basically. But Kara, they're all like sleeping in the same bed about to go to the initiation massacre, and Charon is like, oh, I can't sleep, because he's an insomniac. They didn't put that in the nicknames for this book, but it was in them for last book. Augustus then has this chapter of him just like crashing out in the bathroom, and it's written to be really intense and cinematic, but it's just him looking in the mirror and freaking out. I'm going to read some of it to you. It's my favorite chapter in the book. Scarlet splattered violently across the white sink as it fell from my lashes. The madness of the House of Aries was breaking free, and it only wanted one thing: Alexis. Regret, lust, and emotions smoldering inside my chest. She actually does this a lot, where it's like just the word emotions. I'm feeling such emotions right now. Which ones? He punches the mirror because he's an intense, strong, scary, big, giant, big, intense, hardcore, big man. Shards of mirror exploded outward. In slow motion, they flew toward me, 100 broken versions of myself reflecting in the glinting silver, each man more ruined than the last, ruined again. The man who walked out of that bathroom was not the same man who'd entered. It's just funny because it's a bathroom. Who among us hasn't been there? Who can claim that they haven't had this exact feeling? So me, when I was in high school cutting my bangs in the bathroom, the man who walked out was not the same who'd walked in. But again, this is one of those chapters that makes me wonder if it's a joke. It's like, are we having a laugh? Are we taking the piss? This is so fucking funny. This is hilarious. It might be a work of genius. What chapter was this? It's chapter 24, if anyone's really desperate to read it. I think it's probably it's definitely less than 500 words. It might be less than 300 words. It really, it could have been cut so easily and so little would have been lost, but I am so glad that it wasn't. I'm so glad that it was here. So they go to the initiation massacre. They're getting pumped up. She does fine. It's honestly a kind of confusing scene and I didn't really know what was happening, but Nyx helps her out. She's still here. Nyx is still here. And then they have to wait in prison for the gladiator games to start over, the course of the next few days. There's going to be the gladiator games. And it's clearly a device to get them to share one bed, but I do feel like it is so silly, and also it's an example of the world building that could be expanded upon, because what are the power structures in place that make it so that this would be allowed? Why? Because we've just heard about how Hades and Persephone are so powerful and everybody's afraid of them, and Aphrodite is so powerful, and Artemis is this terror goddess. What's happening that they're not going to step in now? What is preventing anybody from being no, we're not going to do that? And so Alexis, because she doesn't want to sleep in the same bed with her husband, is I'm going to sleep in the bathroom, in the bathtub. And this pisses them off. And the men in this book are so irrational, because she tells them this and Charon tells her to shut the fuck up. Excuse me. Her fucked up little dog, Fluffy Jr., is described as having something that looks almost like it's moving underneath his skin. He has this little growth, and Augustus tells her, it's probably a tumor. Oh, something really crucial that I forgot to tell you. So while she was fighting the Titan, Fluffy Jr. grew, extremely large and helped her fight the Titan. So it used to be the size of a Shih Tzu, I would imagine. And now Augustus has this line and he says, we don't even know if it's a dog or a horse. Do you know what either of those things are separately? What are you talking about? So he tells us, after he says that it's a tumor, he's well, sometimes creatures of a certain, degree of power transform. They have, they molt, and then they kind of come into their true form. So they'll grow other limbs, wings, something like that. And her dog has already transformed. It used to be a little crusty white dog. Now you can't even tell me that it's not a horse. And I'm supposed to be convinced for even half a second that it's cancer? You could bury the lead a little bit. You could so the gladiator competition was supposed to be after the initiation massacre, but because of Medusa and a bunch of shit, Zeus has moved it up. So now it is the day after the initiation massacre. And so they don't have any time to prepare. And Alexis says this line that I'm going to read to you. Hades had planned on giving me the debrief of the SGC the week before the competition, but that was before the accelerated timeline. Why would he tell you about the Spartan gladiator competition a week before it happened? What? Why would he do that? Why would he give you a week to prepare? Why would he do that? So they watch the adults, the older gen. They have to first reveal how many times they've been defeated in they're called labors in the Spartan gladiator competition, which is where we get the Hercules myth from. So they have to show how many times they've been defeated, and the way they do that is they show their chest, because if you lose, you get branded, and so it shows how many times you've lost. And the crowd is so unruly, especially for Aphrodite. Every time that she steps up to the plate, they're screaming some of the most lewd, disgusting things. And why would you allow that? And like, because if I'm God, if I'm a goddess in this universe, that bitch is dead. Whoever just said that, they're dead. And they don't get unruly for the men. So anyway, the older gen goes first. They mostly have no defeats, and yeah, they even say that the older gen's fights are more so symbolic, so they're not really expected to actually struggle with them because they're so powerful. It also kind of goes back to the power scaling thing. It's like, if everybody is this powerful, then I don't really know how powerful anybody is or how powerful any of their opponents are, because they're all being defeated really easily. But anyway, so every time one of them goes, Alexis will be like, oh my god, that's Charon's mom. That's Augustus's dad. Just really hamming up the trauma that these men experienced. And frankly, I don't care about the trauma they experienced. And Charon tells us about how the first year that he was in the competition, he got his ass beat. This is how it is described. Let me read it to you. So they're describing the ways that you can be defeated. Tell her the other way, Charon ordered, his voice loud and harsh. Da-da-da. Charon leaned closer, his voice dropping. There's a fourth way to lose. And then he tells her how he lost in his first year. And so what's just happened is that Charon said to Augustus, tell her the other way to lose, and then described himself the fourth way to lose. So it just feels like a little tiny inconsistency, where it's like either Augustus was meant to say this first line, or Augustus was meant to describe the actual like way that Charon lost. Because what's just happened is that Charon said, tell her, and then proceeded to tell her. But all the beasts are getting defeated. They all have ruined limbs everywhere. Everyone's sitting ramrod straight. That word is also used a lot. Augustus is described as Ares' prodigy. So Ares comes on to do his fight, and Alexis is like, holy shit, this guy is wild. Like, this guy just loves killing shit. And then she looks at Augustus and she's like, oh my god, Augustus is his protege. The word is she did this in the previous book too, used it wrong the same way, where she was talking about how she wanted to be Carl Gauss, the mathematician's protege. You can be a prodigy, but you are somebody else's protege. You can be both, but the word you're looking for in both of these situations is protege. But I don't know. I mean, Alexis, she speaks fluent Latin, but maybe French is outside of her wheelhouse. They explain the rules, and I might be stupid, but it kind of took a second. They roll 2 dice, and it's like anything lower than X is 1 round of X labors. Anything between X and Z is 2 rounds of Y labors, and anything above C is 3 rounds of Z labors. I didn't write down the actual number. I don't know why this rounds thing just really threw me off. I was really left wondering I had no idea what this could be. And the way that it manifests, the way that we actually see it play out, I think also just it took me a while. So Alexis, of course, gets the highest number of labors to complete the gladiator competition, which is 12. So hey, the 12 labors of Hercules. Good. But Zeus loaded the dice with his electricity power. And Hades is trying to stand up for her, you can't make my daughter do that. And she's like, no, I can do it. Because Ceres believes in me. And I guess maybe a larger issue with this book is just the side characters, because most of the time I forget that they're even there because they're not really mentioned. But Drex is here, Charlie is here, Helen is here, Ceres is also a character, Theros is also a character. There's just so many of them that have no development and really almost no impact on the story. The Sarah's thing, I think, will make more sense by the time we get to the end of the book, but at this moment I was like, and what the fuck does she care about what Sarah's thinks? So they're doing the competition. They find out that Zeus wants to interrogate everybody of the Chthonics after their round to see if they know where Medusa is. Medusa is still on the loose. Again, like, why are we allowing this? What's the power structure? What's going on? Alexis hears this voice telling her that she'll do great. And wait, now that I'm reading that back, I don't remember. I don't think this is explained. I think I know what it is, but I don't think it is explicitly said. Because it's not Nyx. She notes that it's not Nyx. Anyway, so the girl Agatha from the beginning, she's an Impusa, and she eats people, so she does her labors and she eats them all, but her second labor is her boyfriend, Hermos, and they have to fight each other, and he beats her. So, and Alexis notes that, like, she's immortal, so he saved her life. I really don't know what that means, but having to do this really ruins him, of course. And then Helen tells us some lore. This is in chapter 35. Helen tells us that Zeus is the only Olympian who can wield his power offensively. Why is that the case? I don't know. Then she also tells us he needs to be outside on a stormy day to wield it. Zeus has to be outside in a thunderstorm to get some fucking thunder. So I don't know why the other Olympians can't use their powers offensively. I don't know the force of this can either. I don't know if they're like not able to use their powers offensively or if they're not allowed to use their powers offensively. I don't know what the implication is there. And it's not explained. So of course, after every day of the competition, they have to go back to their little prison cell and sleep in the same bed, and this makes them feel emotions. And she notices that Augustus has a dimple on his face, and she thinks to herself, how was I ever afraid of him? Let me remind you, he used his mind torture ability to torture you in the first book. He was arguably the worst to you in the first book. He sent you body parts as a betrothal gift, chopped up body parts. He tricked you into getting married to him when you didn't want to. And then, like, you know, afterwards, he kills people and threatens to kill people almost constantly. And generally, he's just kind of a dick. So did I miss anything? We see Hermos and Patroclus have their turns in the arena, and it was here that I realized that the book is really not interested in writing these scenes at all, because they all follow the same format. They're extremely short. The threat comes in, we get a couple of like descriptive chapters talking about like how big and bad this threat is, and they're so scary, and then just like cut to the immediate aftermath of the fight, and the victor is just so strong in the middle of the arena, and there's like ruined body parts all around because they just beat them so bad, and we get almost no description of like actually what's happening in the fight. Achilles goes next, and I was so excited about it because he gets to take his muzzle off for it. And this is kind of what I mean, is that like the Spartan gladiator competition has to be monumentally less important than actually killing a titan in the actual real world. That's going to be killing people, right? But he gets to take it off for the gladiator competition and not for his actual duties. But anyway, I was thinking to myself it would be really funny if he was like ugly underneath. I just think it would be really funny, like, you know, like during COVID, sometimes you would see someone for the first time without a mask on, and they would just look completely different from what you thought they looked like. And so I just think it would have been really funny if he took off the mask and she was like, ugh. And he's looking really intense in his exercise toga. They always wear exercise togas, which I think sounds really funny. Because, I mean, hey, it's ancient Greece. We're in ancient Greece. Take it off. Oil up. And, like, exercise, so, like, a spandex toga. I'm pissed. And Patroclus, he's like really beat up when he comes out because he has to unlock the muzzle. He's really beat up because he got interrogated the other day, and so like he got tortured about Medusa, and they cut his Achilles tendon as part of it. And I thought to myself, why is it called the Achilles tendon in this universe? Because it's like this thing that, oh, they cut his Achilles tendon and now he's like going to his lover Achilles. Why is it called that? The Achilles ankle story is Achilles ankle. Has anyone ever called it that? Achilles heel story. The first literary source that still survives of the Achilles heel myth is Statius's Achilleid, which comes like significantly later than the Iliad, the Odyssey, everything like that. It's actually a Roman writer who's writing retrospectively. Not that, the Iliad is contemporary, but writing retrospectively, like adapting the myth. And like it's very much situated in the fact that it's by his mom. Like it's mentioned because his mom, Thetis, who is not in this book, it wants him to survive so badly, and like she's trying to protect him. So that obviously didn't happen in this universe because, I mean, he doesn't have the Styx curse / blessing, and second of all, he's got a different mom. So anyway, he doesn't take off his muzzle for the first round because he is, as the kids say, aura farming. He's showing off. He's not going to take it off for the first round. He's going to leave something for round two. Round two starts, and I was at this point a little bit confused about the round system and the number system because it's like he's fighting 8 labors in 2 rounds, and so I figured that it was like 2 rounds per labor, but that is not the case. So the second round is the Minotaurs. We make a really big deal out of how powerful and deadly and intense these things are because, of course, Achilles is going to kill them, so they have to be the most powerful, deadly, intense things that have ever lived. And I've got a quote for you guys. They were infamous creatures of destruction, and 4 of them were here, ready to kill. And like, this is a dumb thing, but I mean, it is something that's true of most of the monsters that they fight. Is like there's one Minotaur in Greek mythology. There's one Typhon. That's another one that they fight like 3 of. There's one I forgot what else they fight, but like it's a lot of things. It's like, okay, there's one of those. Oh, Nemean lion was the other one. There's one, and like they're fighting like 8. So it really just kind of it makes you view each of these as a little bit weaker on their own, because like he's fighting 4 of the Minotaur, and Percy Jackson just he was having a tough time with one. Kind of a situation of like less is more, like I would feel more intimidated by the Minotaurs if there was just one, because if there is just one, then I know that one has to be really strong. But anyway, so he's gonna fight the Minotaurs. He takes off his muzzle. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to tell you about this. He takes off his muzzle. First time we've ever seen it in the series, and he has these like X scars over his mouth because someone tried to sew his mouth shut. I actually did think that this was cool. I have to confess. I know that it is like such a dramatic image, but I feel like this actually is intense. Like this actually is hardcore, and you don't need to dress it up or inflate it because it actually is a hardcore thing, for them to have tried to like permanently disable this ability before they resorted to the muzzle thing. I don't know why they did it in an X shape. That seems completely nonsensical to me. I don't really know what they even mean by that, because I mean, straight line will do it, but Alexis says that this makes him look really sadistic, which again is like a weird Catholic undertone that goes unaddressed. And then he, in a statement against the Olympians, cuts his own Achilles tendon, the Achilles tendon, and points the knife at Zeus. Power move. And then he goes on to use his voice torture details unknown ability, and he opens his mouth and sorry and starts breathing fire And Alexis, of course, describes this as being like the gates of hell, and everything is burning, including the sand and the rain. And the rationale is that this is Greek fire, which like has been claimed to be able to burn on the sea. And I think the Greek fire thing is cool. I like that. I think it's, a fun way to integrate actual mythology into the series. It isn't what I expected when they said voice torture details unknown. I imagined something that was related to his voice. That's my bad. More info on Fluffy Jr.'s tumor. It is blue and he has been glowing lately, so I'm sure it's just cancer. Drex does his fight. It's boring. Charon has his turn. He fights 3 typhons. Again, there's one typhon, but it doesn't really matter. They're these aquatic monsters, and they're the biggest, most dangerous, most intense creatures ever. They are beaten immediately. These are class 7 beasts. This is the same thing that Nyx was, and also that the Titans are. Like, they're stronger than the Titans. They're designated kill on sight. They're so dangerous. They hunt sharks, and their spit melts flesh, and Charon kills 2 of them with a single arrow shot. Each. They each get 1 single arrow. But it's like, you've just told me that these are like the hardest creatures to beat ever, and that their spit... Ooh, hang on. Plot hole. If their spit is melting flesh, I assume it can melt wood, and he just shot an arrow into their mouth where the spit is. Maybe the arrow is metal, but I feel like it would still work. But anyway, like, the issue of power scaling is more important, because it's like, you've just told me how dangerous and intense and scary these monsters are, and he killed them in 1 shot. He just 1 shot 2 of these bitches, and then the third one is still also like 1 shot, and the fight is over in 1 page. So there's no suspense, there's no threat, but he did get a little bit of spit on his chest, and it's burning, which ruins his skin, and Augustus can feel it because they're bonded, but oh no, Alexis can also feel it, so everybody starts freaking out, and Charon wakes up. He's like gonna get tortured to find out where Medusa is, blah blah blah, and then, and I really did like this part, Zeus brings out Patroclus because he's got lie detector powers. And I think that was actually a really good choice, because I was thinking to myself earlier when I was reading this book that, like, it would make sense if Patroclus was, if, like, this was his job in society, basically, is that, like, he questions people, he's some kind of detective or whatever, and, like, he knows if people are lying or not, so he can very easily verify if they know where Medusa is or not. The only issue is that he might not want Medusa to be found, so he could lie, and then who's going to check him, because he's the lie detector. But I feel like this is a good choice, and it capitalizes on his ability and makes it feel relevant. It makes it feel thought out. So I thought that this was a really good choice. But then they still want to torture Charon after Patroclus is like, yeah, he's not lying. He's telling the truth. He doesn't know where she is. They're like, okay, well, let's just make sure. And it's described in 0 detail, and I honestly missed it when I was reading it, and I had to go back and look, because I just, like, it was a 1-sentence paragraph, and I was in such a flow state with the skimmability of it all, that I was just like, I breezed past it so fast. And I feel like that is also an issue of writing with skimmability and brain rot in mind, is that it kind of does invite the reader to not really pay attention, because you just kind of assume that things will be explained later, and they are, usually. But so I just feel like that's an issue, and I feel like I didn't really talk about it too much when I brought it up at the beginning, but I also feel like it really undermines your own work, and it kind of invites the readers to not give a shit about your work, and not think critically about your work, and not even really engage with your work, and I feel like that is disrespectful to yourself and the time that you spent and the effort that you put into it, and it makes me honestly kind of sad. Anyway, he gets tortured, but because Alexis is also joined in on this bond, she also felt it, and so he starts freaking out. He's like, oh shit, fuck, I can't believe this happened. They all start love confessing to each other and talking about how they're a family and they love each other. I just feel like there's not a whole lot of romantic progression. I just feel like it's not earned. But of course, this makes Charon feel tender emotions because Alexis loves him, and he feels tender emotions about it. And Then it's Augustus's turn to fight. He fights some more minotaurs, and minotauroi, if you will. And Zeus is like, okay, second round. And Charon is like, no way. More? Yeah, bitch, round two. And they're even bigger, and they're even badder, and more scary, and more dangerous. And Augustus kills them all in 1 calendar second. And the fight is over in like 3 sentences. But it's bad because he's showed his hand. And this is like a really big deal that he's shown the true breadth of his ability, the true scope of his ability. And which I guess is that he can kill things with his mind. I don't really, it was kind of unclearly, they didn't explicitly say what that ability is. I think that it's just that like he looks at he formerly had to vocalize the command to make the minotaurs die. And the way that he did this was he said, die, and then the minotaurs died, the minotauroi died, and now he just kind of looked at the he just Erica kirked them and they died. So I guess he can kill things with his mind, and this is a really big deal because Zeus didn't know that, and that's the problem. Doesn't come up again. And now it is Alexis's turn, and she wakes up and she's kind of freaking out because she can't find Augustus and Charon. They're not here anymore. I wonder where they are. I mean, I kind of thought that because the other girl, Agatha, she had to fight her boyfriend, my immediate thought was, oh, I bet Alexis will have to do that too because she drew the highest number of labors, so she'll have to do all of them. But I actually was wrong because the labors, there isn't like a distinct labor per number. The labors are actually the number of things that you have to fight. I realized this extremely late. My bad. So like I was imagining that if you did 3 labors, you would be doing labors 1 through 3. Like there's a distinct labor number 1, labor number 2, labor number 3. And that because Alexis drew the highest number, of course she was going to have to do this one too because she has to do them all. But actually, if you draw 3 labors, you have to fight 3 things and they can all be the same thing. So, for example, Alexis, round 1, has to fight 8 Nemean lions. 8 is a crazy number to start with. Like the whole deal with the Nemean lion in Hercules was that the fur was impenetrable. And Alexis, she's no trouble penetrating. She's getting through. So basically, they're just big lions. Like they don't have armored skin or anything like that. They're just big lions, just normal big lions. So it's kind of just like horrible to read. It's just animal abuse. Nyx is helping her out, but she gets injured a couple lions in. This girl is supposed to be as dangerous as a titan, and these regular ass big lions are taking her out. But Alexis manages to use her blood powers to kill the rest of the lions. Round 2, she has to fight the 2 titans that she kind of sort of defeated in Rome. And she's so distraught, she has no emotions left to feel. And this is when Fluffy Jr. finally molts into a half dog, half Pegasus. My theory was that he was just gonna be a Pegasus, because I didn't think that half dog, half Pegasus was an option. And she thinks to herself, like, oh my god, Augustus was wrong. It wasn't... No shit. You're telling me, girl. Hercules and the Pegasus are related, like they have shared mythology in the Disney movie. And that's it. Not in real mythology. So Pegasus is the companion of Bellerophon in mythology. So it could be the case that like the Pegasus is fun. It's a fun little character, and it's one that people are like it's very recognizable. Nobody gives a fuck about Bellerophon anyway. Sorry to that man. Nobody cares about Bellerophon, but the Pegasus is fun. It's a very recognizable symbol of Greek mythology, and maybe that's why the author wanted to include it. But it also like kind of could be an instance of not knowing that Apollo and Artemis were twins and thinking that Heracles and the Pegasus actually were linked. I don't know. And so she realizes that this scene was actually written in a way that I found to be pretty confusing, but she has killed them, and she realizes that she's holding a rod in her hand, and that it is her blood, has like congealed and formed into this rod, and it is the rod of Asclepius. And it actually does explain the symbolism of the rod of Asclepius here. The wings are for the creatures. So like the Pegasus is like represented in the wings, and the rod is for the Olympians, and the snake is for the Chthonics. Does it make sense that she would have the rod of Asclepius as a weapon? I want to say not really. It's a weird connection to make. Okay, it's a little bit weird. I do think, and I thought it whenever he was first introduced to the story as like the rod of Asclepius was mentioned, I thought, oh, it would be really fun if Asclepius was one of the gods who was an Chthonic god, if we're already going to be changing kind of the boundaries of what is a Chthonic god. I think Asclepius would be pretty fun to include under the Chthonic category because he is associated with resurrection. He's said to be able to be like such a good doctor that he can bring people back from the dead. And so I feel like that makes sense. It would be fun. Somebody in the comments of my previous video said that it would be fun if Dionysus was one of the Chthonics. I agree. He is also associated with resurrection. He dies and comes back. And so I think that could have been a really interesting connection to make. Also like a very Christian coded connection, like a very Catholic connection to make, but one that is not brought up at all, this resurrection power. So Alexis has healing abilities because of her blood power, and like because blood is life and death, which I see the logical thread. I'm with it. I'm not that mad at it. I think it's fun. It's just that like Asclepius has like no relationship to Hades or Persephone or Hercules. His dad is Apollo, which kind of makes sense because of the medicine thread between them. But like I think Asclepius is fun. I'm always glad when he's included. I think he's a fun guy, so I'm not that mad at it. Does it make sense? Has anything I've said made sense? So I think that the umlaut was meant to be the rod of Asclepius and that the clouds really were wings, but like the connection is not made. There's not actually a connection. They don't actually go back to that and say, oh, the umlaut. That's what it means. It is like the funny thing because at the beginning I said like the book is spelling out things that are so below my grade level, but it's also not spelling out things that are well above rational thought. How would Sarah's have known about the rod of Asclepius specifically? I actually don't know. Because this is the first time that it's manifested for her. And it seems to already exist as its own thing, separate from her. But you know what? We're so close to the end. Let's power through. Round 3. 2 more labors. So it's actually that like she did 8 Nemean Naiads, the 2 Titans. That's 10. Now there's 2 left. Guess who else there's 2 of? Augustus and Charon. I do want to bring up that like Heracles wasn't only fighting things. He did have to do a couple of things that took some intellect. He had to do a couple of things that were, a little bit tricky. He had to steal the apples from the Garden of Eden. I don't know. I don't remember what it was called. Not obviously the Garden of Eden. That's a joke. But actually, that's kind of fun. I do think that it could be an interesting way to incorporate this religious conversation would be like to lean into syncretism, because there are a lot of syncretisms between Greek and especially like early Christian religion. I don't think that whatever the garden is called in the Garden of Eden, I don't think that's a syncretism. Maybe there is a reptile involved and there's apples. So there are so many examples of syncretism, Dionysus being another one. And I think that it would really add some depth and purpose to the inclusion of Catholicism if like the way that she interpreted a lot of the things was through a Catholic lens, while the other characters see it as an example of a Greek mythology lens. I think that could be interesting to lean into the commonalities between the religions. But I think that would require you to be a little bit critical of religion and to kind of take a more view religion a little bit more from like a theology history perspective rather than like a living experience of religion. So you would have to take kind of an academic approach to it rather than a personal approach to it. You'd have to kind of remove yourself from it, and I don't know that that's what the book is interested in. So yeah, her next task is Augustus and Charon. She's gonna have to beat the shit out of them, and they're gonna have to get branded. I don't know why they have to get branded if she beats them, because it's not like this is their labor. She has to complete the labor, but whatever. This is also the point where they realize that she's half blind. And I hate to say, but earlier in the book, her eye is described as being milky white in the way that like a cartoon blind eye would look. So Augustus and Caroline basically just like do it themselves, and they do it for her kind of. She doesn't really. It would be so fun if this was a moment of her just like actually beating them up, but it's not. They kind of do it to themselves, and they have to get branded. Sad. And then it is her turn to get interrogated about Medusa. And so she's sitting there with Zeus, and she says, actually, I do know everything. And Zeus is like, whoa, what are you talking about? She said, that guy Vico, remember I told you to remember Vico, was working for you when I got kidnapped as a baby. So it wasn't Medusa who attacked the Olympians, it was you trying to kill me. And like you had me kidnapped by Vico, and Vico had been bonded to Nyx, which is why she came with Alexis and has been with Alexis this whole time. And when he tried to kill baby Alexis, her blood incapacitated him, so her blood powers were active. And Zeus says, yeah, okay, let's talk about, just like fully confesses to it and wants to move on. Why did he want to kill her as a baby? I don't know. A motive is not given. So Pat comes back in. He's gonna see if she's lying. And Zeus is like, okay, what do you know? Tell us what you know. She says, I don't know anything. And Patroclus is like, she's telling the truth, but she's actually not. And she's so moved that he would do this for her, that he would risk everything and lie for her, that emotions start to choke her. But they still want to torture her. But she tells Nyx to kill them all. Nyx does. Oh, Nyx was healed by her rod of Asclepius powers, the healing factor of that. And she teleports away to the symposium. I didn't tell you that every night after the gladiator scenes, they have a symposium. It's not really a symposium. It's just a drinking party, which I'm okay with that. And everybody is gathered there. She whips out her calculator that has a microphone on it, plugs it into the aux. She takes over aux and plays her conversation with Zeus back to everybody. And which I think actually, like, I was surprised to see the calculator actually pay off in the plot. I know that that seems like a really basic thing, but so little had paid off that I was like, this is actually, I can tell that you plotted this out. And it makes sense. And I think that, well, I mean, why wouldn't they empty her pockets before they started interrogating her? Sloppy work. But I like that it's paying off. It feels thought out. So I was actually not mad about this. And Fate shows up and she says, the prophecy is fulfilled. And then dips. The house of Zeus has fallen. Zeus runs away because everybody is turning on him and is like, what the hell? Why did you do that? And Achilles and so across the room, across the symposium, Alexis spots Patroclus talking to Achilles, and she's like, shit, he's gonna tell Achilles that I was fucking lying, so I gotta go catch up to him. And she does, and she leaps back to the house where Ceres is, and Alexis runs to follow because Patroclus has figured out that Alexis was lying, and that she does know where Medusa is, and also that Ceres is Medusa. I don't know how he made the leap that Ceres is Medusa. I guess earlier he said that he thought Ceres was lying about something, but not about the fact that she didn't kill those kids. It still seems like a little bit of a leap for me, but it's fine. So we see that Ceres, she gets her wig ripped off, and we see that she has 3 snakes in her hair. So she is a Gorgon, and Patroclus starts to be racist to her. In ancient art, Medusa actually does have hair. So I know that in a lot of the modern interpretations, she usually doesn't have hair. She just has snakes. But this is actually accurate to ancient art. So that's kind of fun. I like that. Alexis reveals to us that when she was injured at the beginning of the book and she accidentally jumped to the underworld, while she was there, we thought that she just went there and then like passed out, but she was actually there long enough to find Medusa in the like torture dungeon, save her and bring her back to Crete, where her dad Hades was like, oh no, we're not supposed to free Medusa, and she said please, and he said okay. And we also find out that while she was, before she found Ceres in the okay, hang on. Before the time that we saw her find Ceres in the torture dungeon, she found Ceres earlier in the torture dungeon, and it was the real Ceres. And she was like, did you kill those kids? And Ceres said, yeah, and I liked it. And then Alexis killed her, and Helen and her parents helped her cover it up. So she switched Medusa and Ceres, and she says, like, I think that Augustus and them are gonna notice that this is a completely different woman and that we've put a wig on her, which is hilarious. And the only explanation we get is that Helen says men never notice. They're not gonna notice that this is a completely different woman. But they don't. It's also specified that while Medusa was in this prison, she was in this anti-aging chamber, and so she's still 21 despite having been imprisoned for a long time. It's obviously just so that she's young and hot, so that she can get with the men, as we will see later. But I think it's weird because the explanation that they give is like so that she won't mature into her power. They're gonna keep her 21 forever. It's like 21 is probably the worst age that you can freeze someone at if you don't want them to reach maturity. That's like that's like your prime. I feel like knowing this earlier would have made it more interesting because there is such an ethical and moral issue of like letting everybody else be tortured for something that you know the answer to. And I feel like it would have been interesting to see her actually wrestling with that as it's happening. But instead, this feels like absolving her of guilt because we find out only after we know for a fact that Medusa is innocent and after all the torturing has already stopped. So we don't actually have to see Alexis deal with the weight of that. But Medusa like goes to court. She's absolved of her crimes if she goes and gets a master's degree in fate studies. Which is crazy because she literally didn't do it. But she has to take 2 bodyguards with her because the university is an Olympian university and they hate the Chthonics so much. So of course that's going to be Achilles and Patroclus, obviously. And they have to room together, obviously. And her narration is almost identical to Alexis's. She's this like quirky, nerdy girl. And she says like, oh, I don't want to go to this university alone. Alexis, you have to come with me. And that means that Augustus and Charon also have to come with you. So next book, we're going to be at school. And there's so many little chapters at the end of this book that it was a little bit too many just to set up the next book, which I assume will be about Achilles and Patroclus and Medusa getting in a throuple. But it is heavily implied that Medusa was assaulted by the prison guards, and Medusa in pop culture especially has taken on this reclaimed persona of like a symbol of abuse survivors. So I think it is particularly fucked up to immediately set up her relationship with Achilles and Patroclus, who harass her, and Patroclus, who is racist to her. Because if this is a journey about her healing and finding happiness, I think that the way that this journey happening, being through getting with these 2 gross men, is pretty gross. But that's kind of indicative of the feminism in this book as a whole being very much about like women actually do need men, and actually marriage will fix all your problems, and you can be a strong woman all you want until eventually you will need a man. So yeah, overall thoughts. My overall thoughts were, I think the pacing in this book was egregious, honestly. There were so many things that were like mentioned and dropped, and like things that were set up like so far in advance and then weren't fully paid off, and there was nothing in between. It's like there's a little hint in the beginning and then something happens in the end, and everything between is just kind of whatever. There were connections that were kind of there and like not fully seen through, a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of contradictions. The world building remains to be so ill defined as to be genuinely difficult to understand what is even happening sometimes, and like what the motivation is behind it. Things just occur and people just do things, and you just have to be okay with that. The underlying Catholicism is weird. It makes a lot of the conservatism of the book that I might have otherwise been able to overlook feel more central. Like, I was really convinced that this book was going to end with Alexis just being a trad wife to Augustus and Charon, and the series probably will end that way. It's not a feminist work, and I'm not sure that it's ever made the claim to be. I don't know. But like the women of the story are, mostly it's just Alexis, who genuinely does need help from men at every turn, whose relationship is the focal point of the story. Like everything she does is defined by the men around her, and specifically like the men that she's married to and the men who want her. Her development is tied to them, and like everything that happens in the story is defined by her relationship with men. Sarah's is barely developed, or Medusa, I mean, she's barely developed. Helen is barely developed. The goddesses like Aphrodite and Persephone are even less developed. We have like absolutely nothing from most of the women in the story, and what we do have is like them being reliant on men. So I don't think it's a feminist work now. I do kind of feel like might have liked it better than the first one though, because I think that maybe it's just because I was better prepared for it, but I just really like something about the first one. I don't know what it was. It just like took me out. I couldn't believe what I was reading. This one, at least, I kind of knew what to expect. So I mean, that's my thoughts on this book. Let me know what you think. If you have read this book and you loved it or hated it, I would love to know. If you're just watching this video and you have any kind of reaction or thought about it, I would also love to know. I would love to chat in the comments and see what you guys thought. If you guys have any observations that I missed, any kind of thoughts that I didn't talk about. I'm sure there's so much stuff that I didn't talk about. I really mean it when I say like you could talk about this book forever, and I've already been recording for 3 hours, so I'm gonna stop now, but I would love to continue the chat in the comments. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next one, and I gotta get out of here.